Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome, friends, to the 100th anniversary podcast of Gone to the Dogs. It's really hard for me to believe that I've been doing this podcasting game now for more than 4 years. I couldn't believe it. I started with my very first podcast, didn't even know what one was really, back in May of 2019 with Chris Powell. We started the Houndsman XP podcast, and we did 54 episodes of that one together. And then I started what I called the Nightlife Nation podcast, and did that one for 65 episodes. And then decided to take off on my own. And we started this Gone to the Dogs with W Hunting Supply. And now we're recording our 100th episode. It's so gratifying to know that you're still with me. I know that you probably get tired of this old voice. It gets more gravelly every year, but I do enjoy visiting with you every week. And this podcast debuted on September 27th of 2021. And, man, it took off like a rocket. By the first 6 months of 2022, the podcast was averaging 3,201 downloads per episode. That was over 23 episodes. So I'm really so thankful for everybody that listens in. Thankful to the good folks out at W Hunting Supply, dusupply.com. They can provide anything that you want for your hounds or your hunting activities. Just appreciate them so much. Well, in anticipation of this 100th anniversary podcast, I wanted to bring two very, very special friends of mine to the microphone to talk with you today. And we've been visiting here already a little bit before I push that red button. But my guests today are Lee Currens from South Carolina and Johnny Brinkley from Florida. Now, these we go back a long time. In fact, Lee and Johnny go back farther than I do with them. And they told me it'd be all right if I told you their ages. Johnny just had his 90th birthday back in August. This is August 19th. And we sure enjoyed a great birthday celebration there at the lovely home of he and Lequita's son, Doug, there. Land that we hunted on for many years. Lee first took me up there. And then Lee Currens is 84 today. So with that, I'm going to wish you a happy birthday, Lee, and ask you how you doing.
Doing well, Johnny. I just couldn't be no happier.
Well, actually, I'm Steve. You called me Johnny, but that's all right.
Johnny, I'm sorry, Steve.
Well, folks, I'm going to tell you both.
Usually it's Johnny talking.
It's usually Johnny. Now, Johnny, he started already on you.
He sure has.
Well, I know one thing. When these guys get together, it's never a dull moment. So I'm hoping that some of that will come forward in our podcast today. But, fellas, I just wanted to get with you. Man, every time that I've ever been with you two characters, I've had a good time. Lots of laughs, lots of good stories, lots of smiles. And, I think that's kind of the secret. I know I'm the junior member here of this trio. I'll be 77 in October. But none of us are spring chickens, but yet we've somehow managed to keep our sense of humor and it's just so good to be with both of you. I'm going to ask you, and either one of you can jump in on this one. How long have you been hunting? Johnny, can you remember how long you've been hunting or when you first started coon hunting?
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in South Georgia, and I had possum hunted for a while. There were no coon in South Georgia at that time, not in our area. the first coon track I ever seen, I think when I was 14 or 15 years old. And but we did possum hunt some. Well, when I got grown and forgot about hunting for a while, and Miss Quita made me forget it for a good while, and then I started hunting. My brother, that was 3 years older than me, he hunted religiously. He never hunted in a hunt in his life or nothing. I hunted in some local hunts at one time, and I really thought I could win the Grand American. That's the first big hunt I ever went to. There's nothing close to Florida except that hunt, and I got up there and decided I didn't have as good a dogs as I thought I had, But I enjoy every bit of it, Steve. I do, and I enjoy talking to the young people, and they don't pay much attention to me, but there was many years that when a dog treed, you went to the tree and you saw something or a hole or a nest or something most of the time.
Yeah.
And then we run through this area where there was a lot of trees that the dogs got there before the coon, I guess. But it didn't. But I still enjoyed it. I got to where I didn't like the hunts too good because I was running a shop, and the folks don't think there's a lot of things to worry you when you're the boss, but that's when it gets to be a lot.
Yeah. Well, let's let Lee jump in here just a minute. I want to ask him the same question here, and we'll get that. And then, but Lee, what about you? Do you remember how it started?
Yeah. Steve, I don't really remember the first time. I was raised up in a family of 6 boys, so, and I being the youngest, I just fell in line as they hunted, because all of them were outdoors. They hunted, fished, or did something. But I do remember that I was 6 years old, and my brother had a trap line on a small creek it wasn't a real small creek, it went in Kentucky River. And he took me with him, and I was 6 years old because I was in the first grade. I remember that so well. And he caught a mink. And between me and the mink, he brought us back, and he skinned this mink. And this was somewhere around 1946. And to watch him skin up a mink, and from that day on, I wanted to go hunting. I just wanted to go. And when I was 9 years old, we lived on a farm. Obviously had a dairy, and I can remember getting out of school, and we had a dairy, taking care of the chores and going hunting. And my mother had a 410 shotgun. It was a single shot, and it had the 2.5-inch shells, not the 3-inch. And I would come home from school, and I know I was 9 years old because we moved to another farm that year. And I would get that 410, and me and this old black dog would take off and go somewhere. Like Johnny said, possum hunting. I never saw a coon until I was, 11 or 12 years old. But I don't remember any specific day. I just remember getting things done and grabbing the gun and the dog.
Yeah, well, that was probably about my experience too. Of course, I hunted with my dad, and I can remember the first time, and I wrote about it in my book. I called it The Musky Smell of Mules. We rode muleback on my grandpa's draft mules, put a feed sack over their back. And a cur dog, and I think I was about 3 years old at the time. But I can't remember details about it, but I can remember that hunt. So yeah, that's amazing. Well, I want to get into a little bit more of your individuals. But when did you and well, I'll let Johnny have this one maybe if he remembers. Do you remember when you first met Lee, Johnny?
Yes, sir, I did. It was right outside of the barn where they showed the dogs at the Grand American, and he had Rowdy on a leash. I mean, he had told Rowdy to go lay down by the barn while we was waiting to go, and to my amazement, Rowdy did it. I was really impressed with his dog. I surely was, and at that time, I asked him, like most people didn't think Lee hunted much. And they felt the same about me when I went to showing the dog, off. But I asked Lee, did he hunt the dog much? And he said, well, he's 17 months old. I believe that's correct. And he's a Grand Night champion. I said, do you ever breed him? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, I would like to get me a puppy coming towards Tallahassee when you breed him again. And like I say, I was really impressed with the dog, and he made some good comments about Sam. And
okay,
a lot of people didn't like plot dogs at that time much, or they had a bad reputation in my country. But,
yeah. Well, folks, what Johnny's talking about there is that Capital City Sam dog that he ultimately won the UKC World Show with, and I want to talk about him in detail here in a little bit. Lee, what do you remember about your first meeting with Johnny?
I don't exactly remember that particular one. I just remember I remember Quita and Johnny coming to the shows, and they were always just, had their dogs ready. They didn't come unprepared, and each time you saw Johnny or he won, he was so grateful, and he won a lot with not only Sam and Son too. Son was equally as good as Sam in my eyes, but Johnny and Quita were just special people. I mean, we can't leave Miss Quita out. She was always there. And,
absolutely. And I believe you were the guy that always requested the coconut cake when we went down to Johnny and Lequita's. Wasn't that right?
I remember at the Winter Classic one day. I hadn't known them too long, and we'd had a little episode with a dog I bought out of Texas, and here comes Miss Quita in with this great big coconut cake. And then I think everybody there had a piece of coconut cake at the Winter Classic. You just don't see that now. I wish we could go back to those days. Yeah, I love coconut cake, but man, she can make it too.
Oh my goodness! Well, it's her birthday right there after Winter Classic, isn't it, Johnny?
Yeah, sir. That's what he was talking about. A little thing they had. They really treated us nice. It was Quita's birthday, and we all, checked into the same motel there. And the lady, about 8 o'clock, the lady from the desk called and said, we need to see y'all in the office down here. Said the credit card you gave us is no good. And, oh boy, I didn't like that none. So we go to the office, and I asked the lady what's wrong, and she said, well, you need to go in this private room and let us discuss it. But when we opened the door to the private room, there was Lee and his wife and several of the people singing happy birthday to us.
That sounds like a Lee Currens trick to me.
It sure was. It was really good to me because, like I say, Quita is what makes this outfit here. And it was really good for her, too.
Yeah, she looked so pretty at that party that you had here about a couple of weeks ago, and so good to see her again. Well, Lee, you're the guy that's responsible for me really getting to know Johnny and all that. Do you remember how that first hunt that we took and any of that circumstance?
I remember that you were with PKC at the time, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, I think so.
And we you had the hunt there in Thomasville, Georgia, and
we went, the Sunshine Jamboree.
Yes, and we went to Johnny and Lequita's and hunted on, I think, Wednesday and Thursday night both, did we not? And
I think so.
I remember the trip that we were down there when David McKee came, and you guys treated me pretty badly, and we were hunting. Remember, David had kidney stones, if you remember.
Oh boy, yeah, I do.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Had a stent and everything, and the four of us were hunting, and we couldn't get David's dog rounded up, and you had that thing with the Thomasville schools, with where the red fern grows, and Johnny spoke up, as he always does, and said, "David, you go on back to the house, and we'll get your dog." And Steve, he said, "Well, I got to go to the Red Fern Grove presentation tomorrow, and I'm going with David, and y'all, I got my dog." So we get to Johnny's house, and I got there late, and you guys are taking all the beds, and I slept on the couch. Well, it was like 4 o'clock when Johnny and I caught David's dog and got there, and I'm laying on the couch, and an hour and a half later, 5:30, Steve shaking me, saying, "Come on, Lee, go with me. Where we going, Steve? We're going to do the presentation." And here we go, and it wouldn't even feed me. He took me to McDonald's, got me a biscuit to do that. If you remember that presentation.
Oh, I do very well. We
took fancy at the time, and because I was showing her at the Winter Classic, and they took her all through the school. Some of the kids had her. And I remember that very well.
Well, that's, with friends like that, Lee, you don't need any enemies, right?
I know.
Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg of all the good times that we had down there. And we did go. We confused some school kids because I think they were waiting to see Red Bones, and we bring in the Walker dog. But anyway, that was a great time, and I'll always remember that too. For sure.
4 years, Shirley and I went down to Thanksgiving. We celebrated Thanksgiving. I get 15, maybe 20 years with Johnny and Lequita. I was down there in HL, and we were frying turkeys back, and a whole group of people, 75 or more. And I said, "Johnny, how many people are kidding yours?" He said, "Lee, half of them I don't even know."
Is that true, Johnny?
Listen, if he keeps on talking, I know a lot about him now, so he better be.
Steve, I got to tell this story.
It's certainly been the highlights of my hunting was with y'all down here. And listen, we had a little riff with HL, and Lequita called him when we were going to have the party. I told her that I didn't think I needed to call him, and that's being hard-headed, I know, but she called him, and he said he would come. And then he called back and talked to me about it was on July the 28th when his wife passed away. And he said that's too close to that date that
yeah,
I got too many memories about how we all enjoyed ourselves, and I just can't come. So
I see. Well, the thing I remember, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Johnny, but the thing I remember most about that first trip, Now, I guess it was Doug or somebody had taken the four-wheeler trailer, the little utility, and hooked it on the back of a four-wheeler.
Yes, sir.
And pulled us all down in the swamp there, or down to one of the ponds or somewhere. I remember HL had a young black dog that treed good that night, and I remember hearing that. But I remember, Lee, that your son Lenny was with us.
Yes.
And who else was in that group that night? Do you remember, you guys?
I really don't remember where the folks from Alabama was here or not. The one that had the sold the dog stuff. What was his name? From Joe something.
Bama Supply.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't here, but he knew some people that was here, and they came and stayed a couple of days with me. They brought the camper and stayed, and we hunted. And Joe called me later and told me, he said, that man told me he never seen a bunch of hunters like y'all. Said that we got out over there to the woods and everybody got out with a machete but Johnny, and he got out with two. That was Joe. But we had a good time. We enjoyed it. And you remember when the Black Gold Man was here?
Yeah.
And we went over there with high expectations and never treated a coon that night.
John Allen. John has since sold the Black Gold dog food, and I still hear from him occasionally on social media. I'll get a message or something. Yeah, great guy, great fella, and he never forgot coming down there and hunting with you. And were you there then, Lee? Were you there when?
Yeah. I remember John. He had bought a pair of new boots. They were those knee boots, and every step he took in the swamp was within an inch to the top of them. And I was walking behind him. I said, "He's going to get it. He's going to get it. Next step." And lo and behold, he never did go over his boots. He never got over those new boots.
All right. Yeah. Well,
really?
To Florida with knee boots on, and you're going to be in trouble. I'll tell you that.
Billy Roberts, he sold the dog food, and when he came up, John came up to his house one time. He brought him over here to the house. Billy told him that I had judged fox dogs in the past. And he had the world champion fox dog a time or two, I think. And he was real interested in that and where I showed it. I mean, where I judged. And we got to be pretty good. He brought us a country hound to pick.
I remember.
And there was a whole bunch of people here for that, Lee. You remember?
Yes, I do. We ate that ham in about 30 minutes.
But the next year, he said he wasn't coming. He asked me, was I coming to Autumn Oaks? And I said, yeah. But he said, well, I'm not going to go. But he said, I'm going where Lee Currens is, and I'll take the ham to Lee and let him bring it home. I said, well, wrap that sucker up good and tight. And, and he did. That's what happened again. And we sure enjoyed that. And we enjoyed the camaraderie about it,
Oh, yeah. Well, we
didn't have no fusses about the dogs. And I remember one thing you always said before we turned out. Said we need to take some pictures now while we all speaking to one another. That never happened, I don't
No,
think.
not at all. But I tell you what, we sure did have some fun times. There's so many stories roll out of there. It's just incredible. And I go back and I do have those pictures. And there's an old gentleman over he's passed on now. And maybe you met him when in your black and tan days, Johnny, Mr. Fred Sanders from over there in North Mississippi.
I sure never did, and I wish I had now.
Yeah. He was, Mr. Fred was in his 80s, I believe, when I first went to the White River Refuge, and I met him through our buddies, all of us know Nubbin Moore.
Right.
And, but Mr. Saunders would get so aggravated when we get ready to turn the dogs loose, I'd be taking pictures.
Uh-huh. And he didn't like that.
No, and one night, and the boys still quote this all the time when I get get the camera out over there or get my phone. He'd said, we'd have done treed 2 or 3 coons if it wasn't for this damn movie shoot. He said.
People are funny, but I tell you now, I always have enjoyed. I don't know whether that was one of my passwords.
Yeah.
If you come here and enjoy yourself and everything, you're welcome to come back. If you come down here beating and stomping your dog and carrying on, then I will tell you when we get to the gate that we had a good time, and that's about it, because that ain't why I coon hunt.
Right.
But a dead coon was no good to me. And I killed a bunch before I learned that you don't need to kill all them coons.
Right. Well, Lee and I had gotten together before those days. I believe, Lee, you were helping me and were a tremendous help in getting the PKC bench show program started. And I don't remember what year that was, but I went to PKC in 98. So I don't remember. It wouldn't have been very long after.
It was 99. It was in 99, John, Steve. There, I don't. I think you started at Extravaganza or something.
We did that bench show Extravaganza there in. Did you judge that, Johnny?
Where was it
at? There at Aurora, Kentucky, on the lake.
Yes, I went to it. I sure did twice.
Okay. Yeah.
But I enjoyed the PKC people and all, and I never hunted PKC. I just didn't really feel good, and I don't guess I had a good enough a dog. But they were good people, and now you're talking about the Black Gold Man,
John Allen,
and all of them, and I don't know why, but I just seen people like you and David and Lee and that I liked, and I liked the way they did, and of course I was very lucky because I surrounded myself, I think. All them people you saw at that party, they didn't come down there to stand in the heat. They didn't. They were. They have been impacted out of lives some way, and us theirs, and I sure appreciate that.
Well, yeah, for sure. I wanted to get back just a minute because I want to thank Lee publicly for that, because I couldn't have done that at all without your help, bud. But you would bring the benches and help set up the rings and all kinds of stuff.
Line up the judges and
and then you and I, when we'd get a chance, we'd go pleasure hunting some. And and that's when you had Rowdy and Boomer, and had some good hunts. I remember. I don't know whether I ought to get into this or not, but what do y'all remember about that pleasure hunt we had at Autumn Oaks that year?
I certainly do. 2 old men up a tree.
Oh boy!
I never have told Shirley about that. But
Yeah,
I will.
yes, you did. The next day, you said you were still scared. The next day that we were in the middle of Indiana, and two old idiots up a tree, and, and
Didn't know nowhere how to get out of there.
if one of them were to fall out, he would knock the other one out, and you would have no idea uh, where you were.
Well, now I'm not owning up to climbing that tree because it would have been bad if the guy that was running that hunt had got caught climbing a tree in Indiana during the off season. So I my memory's real fuzzy about that. But
I remember that I knew you was a real coon hunter when we got back to the van, and you told Todd that them dogs were twice as far as we thought they were. That's the reason it took so long.
I remember that, and up until that time, I didn't think that the Steve Fielder would tell something that wasn't so. But
oh no, surely not.
in there, but that was the one highlight of all of my travels and everything. It was just so much fun. Everything was just I don't know to have people like that. It made it all worthwhile
For sure.
To be able to sit here and talk to you two guys. It just made everything. My wife was not big into the dogs. She loved them, took care of them, fed them, everything. But you go hunting, you go to the hunts, you go wherever you want to go. I'll do my thing, and it worked out well for us because I had two dogs in my life that you better never say nothing about. And one of them was Boomer, and the other one was, I guess, the first dog we had when we got married. But she was always there for me, and just like next week at Autumn Dope, hey, you're going. And she's been sick, but I just told Steve she's going. So to have friends,
yep.
The whole thing, I wouldn't have traded it for any other thing I could have. Any other thing I could have got into, I guess, it's my dogs, and people say, why do you coon hunt? It's not necessarily a coon hunt. I don't love coons, but I love to see the dogs work and the people I meet along the way.
Well, for sure, and and there was one other story that it's kind of escaping my mind right here. It'll come back to me, Lee. That I know, and I don't think Johnny was with us that night. Remember when we went over with Eddie over there across the Ohio line?
Yes, he was. Johnny was.
Was Johnny with us that night?
Yes.
What do y'all remember about that deal?
I remember Dan treeing the possums there on that hillside.
Well, we did. I took some pictures of Dan that night. Boy, he could sell it now. I mean, that was a tree dog. Yeah. Old Dan, Dan was out of Silver Dollar Stone, the PKC World Champion.
Yeah, and, Dan.
Yeah.
But he, I don't know what it was the same night or not. We went over there twice with those two young fellas.
Yeah.
Some boys, I called them boys then, but one night, Lee, I don't know what dogs you were hunting, but we never treated a coon.
That's for a lot of them.
And
that was par for the course, wasn't it, guys?
Yeah, that wasn't nothing unusual.
And the last tree they made was not far from the truck, and I stayed at the truck, and one of the young men stayed at the truck, and we had a great discussion, and I'll tell that some later, but you came back to the truck with your dogs, and I asked you as you got started around the truck, I said, Lee, did you see him? He said, yeah, there was two. And no, I didn't ask him, did you see him? I said, did they have a coon? He said, yeah, they had two. I said, well, that is great, And he went on down and went to open the dog box, the lid, and he said, I didn't see them, but I know they were there. So everybody had a big laugh about that.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was remembering was the night that was Eddie Johnson. The fella that we hunted with over there. Wasn't that right? I know it's Eddie, but I'm thinking his last name is Johnson. He'll forgive me because he and his family came down to Florida, and he called me, and we went out to lunch, and he bought my lunch, and we just had a great time visiting and all, and I still see him at Autumn Oaks every year. But that one time we had some landowner down there wasn't too happy about us being there hunting. And as I recall, a gun went off a time or two on
yes,
that.
Sir, I do remember that. We were with him. Was that the young boys, or that was a different man?
No, Eddie was the younger fella. Probably you were thinking about, don't you think, Lee?
Yes.
In fact,
I remember that. And I had went one time before with Ron Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere up there, and the folks shot in the woods that night.
Yeah.
And I told Quita, I said, I ain't hunting up there no more. Them folks, they might get lucky one of these nights.
Well, I don't think there's probably, and I don't want to discourage anybody or put a bad light on the sport of coon hunting, but I doubt there's a coon hunter under the sound of my voice that hasn't heard the sound of gunfire at one time or another out there at night. But that's one thing about hunting on the land down there in Tallahassee, is you didn't hear any of that stuff because the man I'm talking to owned the whole place we were hunting in.
He owns the county.
What's that, Lee?
The man you're hunting with owns the county.
He owns the whole county.
I don't own the county. But I had a good thing with most of the hunters around. In other words, after they got the leasing all the land, I still talked to the folks that had land around it. And of course, they would have liked to have a dog to get over there so they could cuss me out, but that's about all they'd do. Life's good, I tell you. And if you talk to people, most of them understand.
Yeah, they do. They do. It's usually ignorance, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, if I don't know something, I'm ignorant of it, and they just don't understand. They really don't.
I think that's one thing that changed about as much as the dogs and the equipment and everything that we hunt with is today's people don't understand. Back when you asked me when I started hunting, every farmer in the area, I don't guess they ever asked anyone permission or anything. We just drive up and go hunt. They knew what you were doing. They didn't care and drive by and blow their horn at you. And now these people today, if you went through the woods with a light on your head, they'd think you were searching for something crazy or something.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I can understand them. I mean, I can understand that.
Well, yeah.
It's times are really bad now. I remember coming out of the woods one night by myself, and I never came out to the truck, straight to the truck. I would come out down the road or whatever, and there was a lady game warden waiting on me when I come out, and she was surprised that I didn't come out of the truck. And she asked me, did I get confused? And I told her, no, ma'am, that I was wanted to do that. And she said, why? She said, ain't you scared to be over here hunting by yourself in them woods? I said, no, ma'am, not in them woods. When I get to the road, I'm concerned about what's out there. And she said, well, I never heard that. But it got to where I was concerned about who would be at the truck when I got there, But it ain't a good idea to go hunting by yourself, no way. I finally realized that. My wife was very wise to that for many years and told me about it, and I didn't think much about that.
Well, I
It's not a
wouldn't.
good thing.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't consider it really down here. But where I lived in Michigan, you were never out of the sight of a yard light of a farm
Right.
somewhere, and
Right.
and those people were pretty much like you said, they didn't care for your hunting. In fact, if I'd ask somebody about hunting, they'd say, "Well, I don't allow any deer hunting because of my son or whatever. He likes to hunt it."
Right.
I'd say, "I'm not talking about your deer. I'm talking about the coons." "Oh, man, kill every one of them you see. Come in here and have a cup of coffee, and I'll tell you about what they did to my crops last year."
Okay, yes, sir.
So, they welcomed coon hunters up there. In fact, I just talked the other day to a fella I knew hunted on his family's land, and he's a coon hunter. And I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to open the door to a lot of calls to him and all. But he told me, he said, "Come on back up, Steve, and I'll take you around and I'll show you some of the good hunting, some of the same spots that you used to hunt." Because I'm afraid that many of my landowners, were considerably older than I was when I was up there. So the situation's changed, I'm sure. But that's so important to be able. But I got to tell you my one little game warden story, and I may have told it to you before, is we had a lady game warden in Michigan. Her name was Julie. And she checked me so many times, and she knew my truck. I'd leave you had to leave your truck parked alongside the road most of the time. Sometimes you could drive back in a farm lane and park by the barn or whatever. But I told her one night, I said, "Julie, we've got to stop meeting like this. People are going to start talking." And she'd see me coming, she'd, "Oh, it's that coon hunter again." I said, "Well, who do you expect? It's same truck, same dog box," but she was doing her job. She was doing her job.
It's good. But now, like Lee said about not asking, where I came from in Georgia, we hunted every farm around there. They didn't nobody else hunt hardly, and you never asked nobody about it. They just and before my brother passed away, he got to where he had to carry written permission to hunt on any land he hunted. Yeah. And like the game warden, the first night he went without permission, the game warden come to him and took him to the landowner's home and asked the landowner, did he have permission? And I remember the exact words is, "Heck, no, he don't have permission. He was raised here. He's hunted here all his life. And there ain't nobody giving him permission. They all know he's going to hunt." And the game warden said, "Well, you got to write him a letter." And they had a good argument about that. The game warden thought it was as silly as the other man, but it was the law. So,
yeah, times have changed, that's for sure. Well, fellas, I know there's a lot of great stories, and that's really what my listeners want to hear is those stories. But I want to let you, both of you, crow a little bit because you have been extremely successful in the show rings down through the years, both as judges and participants, and had some really nice dogs. Lee, let me throw this one to you. What were your favorite dogs that you've had down through the years? Could you name two or three?
Well, I've had two or three. I would say that, I liked the lady dog. She was so smart that Johnny brought to me out of Texas. But I guess 1972, Fred and I, you've heard this story before, but we borrowed a female that was out of Banjo 2 and bred her to Finn River Joe. And Steve, this by Fred's passing, Fred Sims, and just like a brother to me. And we went to Rushville, Indiana, took the female, and Fred was to get half the litter, to take her and breed her and pay the stud fee and everything. And Mr. Lee Robinson run a feed mill in Lancaster, Kentucky, and they were going to split the litter, he and the female. So Fred and I go over there. 4 weeks old. I was told years ago that 4 weeks, 4 months, and 1 year, that if a puppy was raised properly, he'd have the same bone structure that when he was an adult dog. And we went over to look at these puppies, and they came out of 9 of them, and they came out and they were so just beautiful. But one female just caught my eye, and I said, Fred, you got to have that female. You got to get that female. I had nothing in the dogs. I was just Fred was my hunting buddy. So when they got 6 weeks old, we went to get them, and we went out to the feed mill, and they were out back, and we go out and they come out, and Mr. Robinson hadn't come out yet, and I said, Fred, you got to get that female there. So Fred, being the Fred he was, he said, Mr. Lee, if you'll let me have that female there, I'll take 4 puppies and you can have 5. And he said, oh, that's no problem. Yeah, Fred. So Fred got the little female and 3 others, another female and 2 males. Well, Fred knew I loved that female, and I had, like I said, had nothing in them. And just like a week or so for Christmas, this was in September. I come home. I worked one Saturday. I come home. Fred said, Shirley said, Fred brought you a puppy over. He lived next door to me. He said he brought you a puppy over, put in your pen. I went out there and there was Donna, and he'd already named her, and she just turned everything around for me from what I saw in dogs. She was smarter than I was, and just a coon trained machine. Nothing fancy, nothing loud, nothing screaming, nothing crazy. But I guess I got a painting of her here on my barn still. And she never won any. Well, she won some shows and things around because my boys were all playing sports and things, and I didn't have time to run all over the country. But I would say that when I think back, she was the one that my family grew up with. My kids did. They hunted her and everything. And I think she could talk to you. She was that smart. And she set the stage for Rock and Rowdy and Boomer. They all heard it. You know, I have never bought a dog that was trained. I've trained all my dogs from puppies, every one of them, and to hunt. And she was amazing. I just think back at the times that I don't know if I've ever seen any animal other than a couple of house dogs we had that was really that smart. And I can't stand a dumb dog. I just cannot. I can't put up with a dog that, you know me, that I got to jerk around through the woods and everything. And she was totally trained. And was beautiful too. There were 2 things that she had.
Yeah.
But I would say she was. And people say, oh, you had Boomer and Rowdy. Yeah, that's when I got on the scene and could go to the hunts and things. But I see dogs, pardon me, I see dogs, I guess, a little different from a lot of people from my past. I don't never see the real reason to lead a dog out of the woods. You tell him to come go with me. You know, like Johnny was talking about Rowdy. Let's go, and it's time to go home. And that don't mean they don't hunt as hard as the next dog, but
I can testify how hard they'd hunt. And I've waded creeks and stuff. I remember that one night we were hunting somewhere in Kentucky or Indiana or somewhere. Boomer was treed across the creek and over there, and had to wade the creek and all to go to him. Well, Lee, I'm going to have to get back over to Johnny here because, Johnny, you told me that you have a very special phone call coming up here in a few minutes with your sister, who is an amazing, I believe you told me 100 years old. Is that right, Johnny?
Yes, she was 100 in April. So we were lucky enough to go to her party in in Lakeland, Florida, and Doug took us down there.
Awesome.
And she's a wonderful woman. She sure is. But anyway, she's not doing well. She's going downhill and laying in the bed. They called me and said they had talked to the doctor and the nursing home, and they had agreed that they could set up a phone call at 9:00.
Okay. Well, we want to make sure you make that, Johnny, but I want to give, and we'll be praying for her for sure. But I want you to tell me about this old dog called Sam and how you got him and how that Sam dog.
Sam?
Yeah.
Sam.
We could talk about these old black dogs and all, and we're going to do that in another episode because
to tell you, the dog that Lee first took to hunts was a little black dog.
Yeah.
He won't tell nobody that much, but anyway, Sam, I would sure like to say that I had his mom and daddy and raised them and all, but not my neighbor raised some plot dogs, and I had furnished him. He was a bear hunter, and when he moved out here, I had a litter of black and tans, and he saw them when he come by the house, and he called me and asked me, I sell him one. I said, no, sir, but I would give you one. He asked me, would they run bear? I said, I imagine they would if you train them. And anyway, he called me, and about 2 days later, he called me, and he said, this puppy acts lonesome. Could I get another one? I said, yes, sir. And later on in life, he bought him some plot dogs and raised a litter, and he had to give me one. Well, I didn't really want no plot dog, but he gave us one.
See what I go through, folks.
Huh?
I said, see what I've gone through all my life about the plot.
And I took him, when he got big enough, I took him hunting and got him going really good. And a tree dog that, like, I hadn't heard much at that time. He was a natural tree dog, but he would not open on tracks. He barked a couple of times, and that was
I love him.
And so I told Walt that I wanted to take him back and try him on bear. And while I took him up there, I saw Sam in the pen. And I looked him over, and I really liked him. And I told him, I said, well, when I started to leave, he said, do you think this dog is good enough to win some big shows? I said, I don't know, but he said, take him to your house and work him and see what you think. Well, I took him down here, and he worked, at that time, he was a deputy sheriff, and he called me on Thursday night, and he said, I want to pick Sam up in the morning. I'm off on Friday, and I'm going bear hunting. I said, you may go bear hunting, but you ain't taking Sam. You know. He said, he's my dog. I said, he certainly ain't. He's my pen. And that's the way it happened. Saturday morning, he brought the papers down here and gave them to Lequita. So that's the way I got it.
I believe
Listen now, Sam would have been a really good coon dog. In other words, I treat a bunch of coon with him. And but you know, in Florida, you got cottonmouth and rattlesnakes and bears and everything else. When you turn them loose, it's very possible for something to happen to them. So I quit hunting him. You know,
yeah.
He served his purpose good, and we sure enjoyed him. We probably never would have been no further north than Tifton if it hadn't have been for Sam.
Right.
And we got friends in. Now, you said it the other night, and them people didn't believe it, but what they don't understand is some of them shows that we showed at, there was people from every state there.
Oh, yeah.
And we tried to meet everybody that looked like they wanted to meet somebody. And and we do have friends, I think, in every state.
Well, that speaks for both of you fellows for sure. Very recognizable in a crowd at a big event. Lots of friends, and of course, that some of that comes with the years that we've been doing this. But the main thing, it comes from being the people that you are, and the character
that is absolutely the truth.
Yeah, and
I never knew, Steve. I had it in my mind the only people from up north, really north, they were very arrogant, and the only ones I ever seen, I guess, was from the Bronx or somewhere, and they had
forget about it. Forget about it.
That I worked on them, and
he didn't get
so
that.
So when we started to Ohio on the first trip, I told Quita, I said, I don't know how to act hardly up here. But when we got back,
we noticed that.
When we got back, I told Quita, I said, those people that we're around here, they have trouble. They have money trouble. They have young'un trouble. They have rough trouble just like we do. They seem just like the people around here. And that's the way I always felt from then on. That other people is not snoot your stuff.
That's one of the privileges I've had over the years of traveling all over the country.
Right.
And you're right. People may sound a little different, and the way they're raised are a little different, and the way their manners might not be exactly the way we were raised, but still, down deep, they're good people. And like you say, they have the same hurts and the same joys that we do, and they're people. And when we don't judge people just by their cover, and get to know them.
About the second or third time I met Lee, he came to the Georgia State hunt and I judged it. And he had a pretty dog. I don't know what dog he had. But I found something that I didn't like about it. And I picked another dog. And when the show was over, he kind of hung around the benches, and he came over and told me. He said, how long you been judging? I said, well, a long time, pretty good time. He said, well, you found something that there ain't no other judge ever found on this dog. But it is the truth.
I thought I was hiding it from you. I didn't know.
And, I don't know where he talked to you about it, but he called Beth and talked to her and two or three more, and I began to get calls to judge the big shows. So he's responsible for that, I guess.
I can tell you, Steve, of what he is talking about. I was showing Boomer, and Boomer was young, and of course Boomer won the AKC World at 11 months old, but he was still, I could get him by, and Boomer didn't track real well if you led him from your left side, and I never knew why. And Jan, my daughter-in-law, came down, and I said, and she had one of those video cameras back then. We had to put it up on the screen, and we just led him in the driveway. And I found out that, hey, you lead Boomer on the right side, and he traveled as well as any dog. And Johnny saw that. Johnny knew. I remember it well. But I got to say one thing about Johnny and Quita. I went down, Shirley and I, and took Boomer, and Quita had her boots on and her camera and everything, and we took Son and Boomer and went hunting, and both of them had won part of world championships in the shows. And I don't think that, I've hunted with dogs all my life, some of the top dogs, and saw what dogs do in the woods, and Son, and they put on a program that any of those dogs would do. But then you turn around and you go to the show, and I just had a fellow at the Grand American this year, and this is a sore spot with me. I don't know why people feel this way. That Tommy Lanning and I went out and got us a hot dog. We sitting on the table, and this fella and a couple of younger kids come. Do you ever hunt any? You know, and no.
Right. See, that's the comment that Paul Sheffield made about charcoal.
Yeah.
He said when he picked him for the grand champion part, he said, if you don't hunt them, they look good, you know. And at that time, charcoal was the only dog that I owned. And I hunted him every time I could go hunting. And me and him had a discussion about it, and he came hunting with me. And from then on, me and him was buddies, I guess.
I never was in a position to have a lot of dogs, and honestly, I never had a desire to have a lot of dogs. Right now, I got 3, and I got 2 too many. But just I'm like Johnny. If he eats my feed, and he's gonna hunt, and you know, just like the guy, I wanted to tell the guy, yeah, about a few years ago, I won. Placed 4th here at the Grand American with Boomer, who had just won the show the year before. And,
yeah. Well, I know that's been a pet peeve of you guys for the years, you know, because we've had many, many conversations, the 3 of us, and independently, one-on-one. But, and I know, and I'll tell the world, and literally we do reach the world with these podcasts, that you guys are about as hard hunters as I've ever hunted with when in the day. Everybody under the sound of my voice is going to get older the way we are, and they're going to find out that you can't do it at the level that you did back when you were a younger man. It's just, it's physics. That's just the way it works. But
and you know, if you go through life, if a man asks you, "Do you hunt him?" Don't get mad. Don't get red faced. Just tell him, "Yes, sir, I hunt him pretty often," or something. Me and Ed Willis was sitting on a bench in Albany, not at the Winter Classic. It was at a regular hunt, and there was 2 young people, young men, came by, and one of them said, "There's a world of information sitting down on that bench." And the other one said, "Yes, sir, and if you'll stop, they'll tell you about it." I never forget that.
Yeah.
We laughed so bad about that.
Well, fellas, you know, man, I wish we had 2 hours here, but I promise my listeners I'm going to wrangle these guys up again and get them back.
Because Lee's got a lot of stuff he needs. I know I have talked too much, but we certainly have enjoyed ourselves, and our life has been enriched by meeting people like y'all, and you just don't. I had a young man ask me the other day at the party if I had ever seen anybody plow a mule. And I said, "Yes, sir, I sure have, for a lot." And he said something else, and I said, "That was me. I seen me plow a mule." He said, "No, you ain't plowed no mule."
Yeah, I have too.
You know, guys, let me tell you this. Real quick, I
had people remark to me, some uppity people, and they asked me what I done for a living, and I told them I was a mechanic. I worked on transmissions, and they said, "Boy, that's a nasty job, ain't it?" I said, "Well, you wouldn't think so if you'd ever picked cotton or shook peanuts. You'd think it was a really good job." And that's the truth.
Well, listen, I have 2 cousins that are the same age as me on my dad's side of the family. And my dad's sisters, 2 different sisters, boys. And when I was a kid, you know, we would go to Tennessee to the farm, to my grandparents' farm. That was our vacation. That was my Disney World. Okay.
Right.
But I was always envious of my two cousins because they'd be talking about how they got to plow with the mule. They got to, learn to plow. My uncles or a neighbor farmer or whatever showed them how to plow. And I always felt like I was left out, and that frustrated me because I wanted to learn to do that too, but I never did.
You didn't, Steve. You didn't miss out on nothing that time. We raised tobacco, and that was our cash crop. And you can't plow tobacco with a tractor because the hills run over the leaves. So, and the leaves is what you sell, obviously. And you have a mule, and just one mule pulling one plow to the tobacco patch. And we had one mule that was crazy. We had two, and he was just crazy old mule. But to get all the tobacco plowed, you had to lead the mule. You couldn't, one of them that would walk through the road. You had to lead him. And I remember being 8 years old and me leading that mule all day up and down the row of tobacco.
And the kids today, they get frustrated if you ask them to walk home from school. And back then, kids, as soon as they're big enough to physically do work, they were required and expected to do work. My dad said he hoed corn all day long there in Tennessee.
From school, nothing. They're too good to ride the bus now.
Oh, yeah. Got to get in you been in a car loop or drove by a school lately and see all them chauffeurs?
I do it daily.
Yeah.
Most folks now looks at a mule as a dumb animal. They talk about it. And a mule was pretty smart. You tell him to G, and he would move over some. You tell him to ha, he'd move the other way a little. And you tell him to stop, and he stopped. And you tell him to take a couple of steps, he'd take a couple of steps. Well, I don't know of many animals that you can train that good, but a good trained mule was like that.
Oh, yeah. There's a picture hanging on my wall right here over my shoulder that I had. Go
Johnny,
ahead.
It's according to how you do the training. I heard a story one time about this back in the day when the horse and buggy, and this guy just got married, and him and his new wife were going on their honeymoon, and the horse made a bad turn. He got out and straightened the old horse up and hit him upside the head. Went on down a little farther, and the old mule made another bad turn. And the guy gets out, gets the horse on the right road, and hits him upside the head. I was on a little, each time I'm getting ahead of myself, he said, that's one. The next time that was two. And he said the third time he got out and got his gun and shot the old mule. And he gets back in the buggy, and his wife said, that was awful. And he said, that's one. So it's how you do training.
Yeah. Well, listen, Johnny, we've got you down here to about 3 minutes till you need to
go.
Yes,
sir, I was fixing to remind you, because when they call, I don't want to, be rude, but if they call, I've got to stop and talk to her if she's able to talk.
Well, buddy, I can't.
Let's do this again.
Oh, absolutely. I'm for it. Anytime you fellows are ready. And Lee, if you want to hang on for a little while, do you need to go now too?
No, I have.
Okay. All right. Well, Johnny, we're going to let you go and hope that everything goes well with your phone call with your sister.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Well, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to do it. And like I say, keep up with the bad things Lee says about me, because I got some things too.
Okay, I'll keep track here. Okay.
Okay, appreciate it, and we will talk to you later.
Yeah,
Lee, we'll talk. We're gonna call you now.
Yeah, do that, Johnny.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Johnny.
Bye.
Well, Lee, you still with me?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
I guess Johnny's gone now. Johnny, can you hear me? No. Okay. All right. Well, I am so glad that I did get you and Johnny on together, because I know your friendship goes back a long way.
Long time.
Long time. As I was thinking about this podcast today, I personally, a lot lately, I've been thinking about, when you get to be our age, Lee, certain things become kind of evident, that we are getting older, that our lives are changing, that we really can't do everything that we'd like to do or that we once did. But I'm certainly not a gloom and doom guy, and I know you aren't. You're one of the most positive guys I know. And, everybody out there listening, if you're a young guy and you're still in high school or college, or you're newly married and just got your first job or whatever, and you love to coon hunt, my only advice to you would be to put your priorities in order. Put your family first. Put your church first. And put your job, your livelihood, and then if you work a good job, you can afford then to coon hunt. A lot of young people want to, say, well, I want to be a professional coon hunter. Well, the main thing is to get education or training skills and go out there and make the money. Then you can. What do you think?
Well, I was lucky, and a lot of times you have to have luck. I was really lucky that I got out of school and had 1 year and had to go to work. I'm married. I had to go to work, and we came out okay. I was just turned 31 when I had a job at a Bendix Corporation, and our plant manager came and sat down on my desk. I was at that time like a general supervisor, and Bendix is a huge company, Bendix Braking System, and told me I was going back to school. And I was fortunate that a good guy, I got a chance to. I went to school while I was working. I would go to classes and things to get my degree in engineering, and it just opened up everything, when you can, if you don't have money, you're not going to do a lot of traveling, a lot of hunting. I don't know how you can. I couldn't.
Right.
So I tell all the young people, you hunt, but if you hunt till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock is starting time tomorrow, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, it was a given to us that if we wanted to do that and you wanted to go out and stay out all night and all, when that clock went off in the morning, your feet were going to hit the floor, and you were going to go to work. And I've been to work many days. When I was in the military, we'd work shifts, when I first went over to Japan. And we'd have a 3 to 11 and 11 to 7 and a 7 to 4.
Yeah.
And on that 11 to 7, we called that mids or midnights. And the boys would say they were bleeding, and that meant they were sitting there trying to do their job and stay awake, because your body never did really on that 4. You get 4 on, a day off, 4, mids, a day off in 4 days. You never did quite adjust to that, So, boy, those midnight shifts were kind of tough. And that's kind of like later on in life when I'd be out coon hunting, and had to get up and go to work the next day. And I'll confess, I went to work at UKC many a morning when my head wasn't all that clear. But
well, you had different responsibilities than I had. Until I came to South Carolina, I was in management, and that was one reason I came to South Carolina with the job and whatever. But you just have responsibilities. You got to be there. If you got people, at one time I was 34 years old and had 600 people reporting to me, and you can't lay in all morning and everything.
Right.
You sample that's got to be there. You be there.
Well, you bring up a point right there with that. Now, I believe you retired with Michelin, right?
Yes, I'm retired from Michelin and I'm retired from Bendix, both Bendix corporations. I only had 11 years in it, Bendix, but Bendix is a lot bigger than Michelin. Auto Light, Fram, all of that belongs to, is part of Bendix.
I got you. Well, the point
and
I want to make, and of course, Johnny was a successful businessman, had his own auto
yes,
transmission repair business there in Tallahassee, which is a good sized city. And, to the people that are listening out there, it's kind of like you guys being accused of just being show people when I know, and I've been witness to you hunting hard and having good dogs, top dogs. And I think people tend to look at coon hunters, that's just an old drunk from the backside of the tracks,
yeah,
and all. But man, think about it. I mean, professional people from all walks of life have enjoyed this sport down through the years, but most of them, I think, have been, raised up somehow in it. And that's what I worry a little bit about the future, is that are these kids getting grounded, at an early age?
right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know that there's people out there that I never bred a female. I haven't. Steve, I probably haven't raised 5 or 6 litters of puppies in my life. That's not something I always had. I guess enough friends that someone had a puppy. I wanted, and I had the Gary Cooks of the world and the Fred Sims of the world and Harold Kays that hey, you got a litter of puppies, and I never bought a puppy from those people. Hey,
Sure.
you puppies,
Yeah.
this, and that's the thing that. But you know. My first objective was to go coon hunting at night, not the night hunts, not the bench shows. It's to go out with my friends and hunt at night. And then the showing just became part of it because I guess I wanted a good looking dog. I was proud to have a nice looking dog, but I've had puppies out of Banjo too, Fenner River Joe, uh, Gold Creek Mundo, Spring Creek Radar, House's Lipper, and all of them have won major shows. So don't think those dogs can't win too if you want to.
Well, that's just like a who's who of coon dogs, and
Yeah,
from your standpoint, is that you hunted with those dogs, and you know.
Dogs, every one of them. I hunted with every one of those dogs, plus other dogs that I didn't like. We were Table Rock Flying Hawk. We just talked about Junior passing, which was so sad last
Absolutely,
week.
and we
going
remember Junior so well, and pass our condolences to Joan and that whole family. But yeah. But
Shirley and Todd and I going to took Dinah to Table Rock Lake and brought her to Flying Hawk. That was Junior's daddy, Raymond Laster's dog, and
beautiful hound too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Those were dogs, they were just. I don't know. Why do people think they were show dogs? They showed a lot of those dogs back then, but they weren't high level show dogs. But just cross the right things, and like I said, Boomer. I didn't raise the litter that Boomer was in. I didn't raise the litter that Rowdy was in. I did raise Down and Rock's litter.
Right. Well, looking back, things may have changed somewhat now because dog shows have gotten so big and so many people have gotten involved with it. And today it's pretty much dominated by the ladies, in the show ring anymore. But back in the day, when you're talking about some of these dogs, a bench show was just a spinoff of the hunt. I've liked it. Yeah, I can imagine, and I wasn't there, but I can imagine, at some point somebody said, throw those bales of hay over there and stack us, put your dog up there and see how he compares to mine. Or put up a couple of cinder blocks and a 2x12 across it, and said, and which one looks the best, and there was an evolution there, but they were my point being is those were hunting dogs, and that the show was just kind of a sideline or a time killer, till it got dark, and those. Original show dogs like that, that did so well. And I'm reminded so much of Junior. My first experience managing Automokes was in 1983. And, the shows, especially like the Grand and the overall pick in the National Grand and all, was on Sunday. And I can remember seeing Junior, and I remember seeing Squirrel Hicks, Sheila Hicks, and with Tara, and Junior with that Mundo Junior dog, and somebody told me the other day, and I just. It's hard for me to think of the memory of Junior because I like Junior. I posted a little something every morning. Yeah.
I know that we were Southeastern Trend Walker days, and this was in the 80s, back in the 80s, and I had three male dogs in the finals, and I had one, and Junior had two, and Junior had a young lady there to show one of his dogs. Well, they had the benches across from each other, and Junior was showing both dogs. He beat me, so I didn't have no. But he had both dogs. He had his set up, and he would turn that one loose and turn right around and set the other one up from the opposite side the young lady was on. And both dogs, I said, gosh, I can't even get mine to show as good as both of his, and he's showing both of them.
Well, somebody brought up the thing there back several years ago. The late Timothy Ball had a youth camp for the coon hunters, and Junior was giving a demonstration and a lecture, I guess you'd call it, on showing dogs. And I don't remember which dog he had at that time, but I imagine it was that Mundo Junior dog. And he said Junior just stacked that dog up and turned away from him and continued to talk. And for the whole 20 minutes that Junior was talking, that dog was standing there.
Yeah.
And didn't move.
That's the way these were there. You turn around and set the other one up and leave that one alone. It just in there. But that's how you win, Steve. But you have to prepare. You can't win if you don't prepare to win. And like John Wooden said a long time ago, winning is easy. It's a will to prepare to win. That's hard.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Charlie Botkins from up in Michigan, Beechwood Chip's dog. He'd stack him like that and stand back and fold his arms. And somebody'd say, well, look, that guy's showing off. Well, no, he'd done his homework, He had that dog prepared, But go ahead.
I remember, I think it was Fred and I, we went up to we were in Michigan and went hunting with Charlie. People think Charlie Botkin didn't hunt. Charlie Botkin coon hunting. He
absolutely he did. Absolutely he did. A great guy too. I haven't seen Charlie in quite a while. I hope he's doing well. Well, Lee, we've been at this here about an hour and 20-some minutes, and I really appreciate you coming on. I've been, for a long time, I wanted to get you and Johnny on together, and we haven't scratched the surface on all the stories, so I think we got Johnny wound up a little bit. I believe he'll come back on with us, and we'll do another one. Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Johnny and Quita are just so terrific, along with others. I can sit here, and I was just thinking about all the people that are not showing now, that were showing then, and the new ones that's come on. The people that, like you're saying, the ladies, they were dedicated, and they don't hunt the dogs today. Yeah, you people out there that just starting out. They don't hunt these dogs today like we did in those days. But it's hard to go to a hunt and not have someone that should show a dog that never been hunting. All those dogs had been hunting. I wouldn't compete against someone that hadn't done the same thing. Johnny hunted his dog. I hunted with Son. Well, Son, he took Son the night we were at Autumn Dope. We were talking about that hunt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, Lee, the purpose in this podcast for me is to record these stories and to get them, and if nothing else, that the families will be able to look back on these interviews and so forth, and how I would love to have something like that from my dad and my mom. I used to sit with my mom, and she'd tell those old stories of growing up in a coal camp in West Virginia. And they're timeless. They're precious. They're priceless. And going forward, I'm going to record as many conversations like this as I can until I get too old, so that they can be saved.
And I can do much longer then if you get
it won't
old.
be. I better hurry up.
Yeah.
Well,
one thing, Steve, back in somewhere in 93, 94, Todd, you were with UKC, and he asked me to do I don't know what you would call it, a thing on the shows and how what we need to change and things. And last week when Fred passed away, or last month, we were looking for pictures here, and I found this thing that I'm going to bring it to you at Autumn Doak. I got it in my truck, and it just Todd had asked like 6 questions about changes or this, that, and the other, and I
Todd Callum, you're speaking of.
Yeah. I had handwritten this stuff, and I got to look at it, and just what has changed since then, and I had a secretary at Michelin, and she was on vacation this week, and that Todd wanted this stuff. I don't know whether he ever published it in the magazines or not, but I'm going to bring it to you. I want you to look at the shows, what they were then versus now. And it was just surprising to me that, hey, did that happen,
Yeah. Well, I'm so thankful to have been able to been in probably the best seat in the house, sitting behind the mic at a lot of those major shows with the dogs we've been talking about here. And, it's such a privilege it was. And I will give a plug here. Alan Gingrich, who is the honcho of the field ops department there at UKC, is doing a special podcast at Autumn Oaks. Well, now this podcast here will air on Monday prior to Autumn Oaks. Autumn Oaks will start on Thursday with the duels hunt and so forth. But anyway, it's 70 years of night hunting at UKC.
Wow.
And we're going to go back over a lot of the history and all. And I was really honored by that Alan would ask me, and I'm looking forward to that. And that will be, I'm sure they'll probably air it, I imagine, right after Autumn Oaks. So that's something that listeners can look forward to. Well, Lee,
two things that I was honored to, and I don't know why that I was selected, but whatever. And I told you last year they had the first Beagle World Championship, UKC Beagle. And Todd called me and asked me to go judge it. And Shirley and I went to over in North Carolina and judged that. I said, I've never judged a show. And he said, well, he wanted the breed standard to stick sort of like the trend marker, that whole thing. And then guess what? About 3 weeks ago, he called me, and the first national brace, I don't know how exactly the Beagle terms is.
Well, that's where they run 2 dogs together.
Is in October, and he's called me to go judge it, and I look forward to judging.
Well, sure, absolutely.
These dogs are hunted in a hunt, and they got to be hunted to full time, not entered, unless they're picked up. They got to compete.
Yeah, and I meant to touch on that when I was talking about those putting the dogs up on a hay bale or cinder blocks in a 2x12. Back in those days in the
my first experience at Autumn's Oak in Greencastle there in that one building is they had a stove in there. It was cold that weekend, Labor Day weekend, and they had a fire going in the stove, and they had about 25 foot of cinder blocks, as you say, and the bench was up on those blocks.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
to go there, you walk through the show arena there, venue there in Richmond. You wouldn't even think that ever came from.
Yeah, the roots for sure. Yeah. Well, we still had the old benches. UKC used to have those long benches, and Fred had them covered in a plaid carpet. I don't know if you ever remember showing on those or not, but they were long benches, and the handlers started wanting to be able to move around. Well, it came from the fact that these judges, rather than walking around the bench and go and look on the other side, they'd make the guy to have the dog all stacked up just right, and then they'd make him turn it around.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, so that's what brought about those individual benches. And I was,
And, judging these shows and everything. And I tell the young people this, and we did a couple of seminars and things on UKC, but your job as a judge is to pick the dog, and please don't start picking people. I mean, sometimes I see that, but or I think I see that, but the thing that you pick the dog when the first time you see him,
Yeah.
And tell these young people to. Hey, be prepared. Don't stand there and wait on the judge to come and look at your dog. You don't know what corner of his eye he's looking at your dog.
Yeah.
And a 10-minute dog show is just too long because every judge has already picked them in the first 2 or 3 minutes.
Well, I'm sure. And
it makes you feel good. Thing.
Yeah, I was giving comments at the American Plot Association show this last spring. They asked me to judge one day. And my buddy, Mark Miller from North Carolina, who he and I partner on this little plot dog. And after the show, he said, just pick the dog, cut all the commentary down. He said, you know which one you like. Just put the trophy down. I said, no, those people like their 8 minutes of fame or whatever it is, But
well, they paid their entry fee, and they're entitled to display their dog for the people.
That's right. Well, Lee, you and I have got to do another podcast just talking about all this bench show stuff because there's a wealth of knowledge there. I remember specifically when I was with AKC, I believe, that we went there to Newport, Tennessee, and you put on a seminar for the youth there. They had a big youth hunt that day, and you mentioned your Tommy Lanning. You mentioned earlier, and Tommy's daughter just got married, and I remember she was showing the dog. I believe which dog was Lauren showing?
Little Bell.
Little Bell, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we want to wish Lauren and her husband a happy life, and what a beautiful young lady she is. And Tommy's my buddy. He and I occasionally pleasure hunt at Autumn Oaks, and so just a great family.
Tommy came to my house. He was like in high school, and I just moved down here, and he found out I was hunting, and he came to my house, and I would go pick him up and take him coon hunting and take him coon hunting. And we'd travel all over the country. He won Autumn's Oak at 16 years old, best female show, showing Jake's dog.
Yeah.
And he's a competitor. Tommy's
yeah.
And Lauren was a competitor too.
Oh yeah.
But she had to get that hair combed and fixed and everything before she could.
Or Lee, I told you the audience that we were going to talk.
Let's go, Lauren. Let's go.
Yeah.
But, and her husband brother married him. So her brother-in-law married him. He's a preacher. He's her brother-in-law.
I got you. That's interesting. Well, when you get old guys like us together, we tend to talk over each other every once in a while because we really don't hear as good as we used to. But, man, it's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and with Johnny. And, yeah, it's been terrific. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at Autumn Oaks. And by the time this thing airs.
Next Thursday.
Huh?
Next Thursday. Be there. My darling, sweet wife is getting better and better each day. And,
well, that's great.
She's probably in there right now fixing me an egg sandwich.
Well, you better get it and get after it. And we got up before breakfast to do this one this morning.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you getting up early and it's been a good one for my 100th podcast for Gone to the Dogs. I've been so honored to have Lee Currens and Johnny Brinkley with me. And folks, I'm going to wrap this one up for this week. Hope to see all of you at Autumn Oaks. We'll be there in the headquarters building right by the UKC headquarters. In the tent, you'll see the Gone to the Dogs banners, and come by and we'll put the headsets on and we'll record your story while you're there. If anybody asks you where's Steve Fielder these days, tell him, well, that old dude, he's gone up there to Indiana to Autumn Oaks. He's gone to the Dogs.
To the Dogs, that's right. Steve, I got a parking place for you if you need it.
Appreciate it, Lee. Bye now.